I own a company that I founded 4 years ago. I think the single biggest thing that I miss about just being an airline pilot is the fact that when you're off, you're off. The joke is that pilots aren't happy unless we're unhappy, or that we're like seagulls and all we do is stand around and squawk. You got to throw rocks at us to get us to fly. I've lost all my money on one of those particular deals. It was ground up construction in Hawaii, actually, and that was a complete disaster. I took a hard right turn in my real estate journey and started very aggressively investing in syndication deals. I love real estate. I'm a deal junkie. I love looking at deals and acquiring real estate. I didn't love the management. So once I owned it, chasing around property managers, dealing with financials and shopping insurance policies, just wasn't what I was called to do. And I thought to myself, you know what, this is silly. Let me just focus on my primary career, skip the side hustle, and invest passively. But I think the most important thing is track record and relationships when you're looking at pilots to fly your aircraft. Most high income W-2 professionals have a tax problem, which they need help with, and real estate is a great way to address that. We invest as a group, so we're essentially a very large jet pilot investor club that offers streamlined access to commercial real estate opportunities. So we're educating the pilot group, increasing everyone's financial aptitude, and then also changing lives by offering exposure to these types of investment opportunities. If you're wanting to get into real estate in a big way, I cannot stress enough how important it is to surround yourself with other people who are in the real estate game. Real estate is a team sport. It's not something that you can do in isolation. I think for mindset, the key is just surrounding yourself with a network and a community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and that's in the form of just pay to play. If you want to start a company, you need to surround yourself with other people who are doing it, and if it takes cash to get into that room, that's the price of admission. Bought my first house in Vegas when I was 25 years old in 2012, and rented it out to a family. It was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, single-family home in Summerlin. I think I bought that house for $175,000. And a couple years later, I built some equity in it. So I sold that, made say $100,000 on it, something like that. So the real estate bug really bit me in high school. Got really into the idea of passive income and financial freedom. And I read a bunch of books about flipping houses, not to say that I really wanted to get into flipping houses, but I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and a bunch of real estate investing books that really caught my passion. And the very first day that I flew in this program was a Piper Seminole, and having those 2 engines out next to me and taking off in the multi-engine, I mean, that was just it completely changed my perspective on flying, and I couldn't sleep that first night. It was so much fun.
When I was about 16 years old, I came home from working out at the gym, and I saw my dad sitting on the couch. And my dad at the time was about the same age that I am now. He was a little bit out of shape, and I went up and jokingly pushed on his belly and kind of laughed, pointing out that, hey, I have a 6-pack and you don't. And my dad just looked at me and he said, Alan, as you are, I once was, and as I am, you will someday be. And I thought at the time that was crazy. There was no way that I was ever going to be 47 years old and maybe a little bit overweight, and that just was never going to happen. And now I recognize that my dad could see into the future. He had been where I was. He knew where I could go, and he probably didn't appreciate the fact that I was making fun of him for maybe being where he was at the time. We have an opportunity today a little bit to peer into the future. I have a lot of friends that are working their way through flight school or going to medical school or whatever their occupation is, that right now they're in the middle of this struggle and they look at maybe some people that have financial success or are further along in their career path and wonder, is that even possible? Can I even be there? And I'm really excited to have Tait on the show today because I feel like he's going to help us peel back the future for some of these young pilots that are looking for plane success in their careers. Tait, tell us about your experience, what you've been through, and what you're up to now.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, it's funny. I had the opportunity to peer into the future when I was 11 years old. My uncle, I have two airline pilot uncles. My grandfather was actually an airline pilot as well. He passed away, unfortunately, when I was only about 6 years old. My two uncles, one for American, one for Hawaiian. So flying background. When I was 11 years old, I flew down to Florida, where my uncle was a captain for American, and he took me under his wing for 2 weeks, and we flew a Piper J3 Cub, Cessna 172, and a Piper Archer around for about 15 hours, something like that. And at that time, the flying was really cool. I loved the small airplanes and stuff, but even more so, I looked around and I said, man, this guy has a big house and a boat. He lived right on a canal with a swimming pool and a couple of hot rods in the garage and musical instruments. And, he never worked, made a ton of money. I'm like, I want to be like this guy. So that's what started me on the path. And while I loved real estate and I almost diverged into real estate in college, I went down the aviation path, and boy, it's been nothing but fun.
So now, Tait, is that true? Do you never work? Do you have a lot of money? So did the future happen for you?
It really did. I mean, I've had a great career. But I mean, I do both now. I own a company that I founded 4 years ago. I think the single biggest thing that I miss about just being an airline pilot is the fact that when you're off, you're off. I mean, I joke that when you set the parking brake, it doesn't matter if the plane's on fire, right? You're done. You're done. You're off. And the company has never called me in my entire 14 years unless it's to offer me double time to go fly a trip. The fact that you never have to answer an email, you almost never have to answer your phone unless you're on reserve. It's just an incredible career, and we get a ton of time off, and we're very well compensated for what we do. I think that it gets lost sometimes on pilots who, the joke is that pilots aren't happy unless we're unhappy, or that we're like seagulls and all we do is stand around and squawk. You got to throw rocks at us to get us to fly. That's sort of the analogy for airline pilots, and we'll complain about anything, but at the end of the day, you're getting paid as much as a physician. You're working a lot less.
So you had this experience flying that Cub and seeing what the lifestyle was, but that takes a few years to materialize. And for anyone, maybe there's a lot of kids, my kids, considering an airline career right now. What does that look like from, wow, that looks amazing, to what's the reality of that in between messy, hard work part for people that are curious about what it takes to become an airline pilot?
Well, I just was at the Women in Aviation conference in Orlando, Florida, and they had a jazz band that was playing during the opening of the exhibit halls, and they were playing AC/DC, It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. And I thought that was so fitting because it is. It's a long road, but I've mentored a lot of friends through the process, and the thing to keep in mind and to keep it front of mind as you're going through it, if it's something you really want to do, is that it's fun. It's a fun road. It's a fun adventure. You get to play with airplanes. So what it looks like, I mean, for me, what it looked like was, I started flying when I was 18. I started flight school when I was 18, and or 17. It took a year to get my private. It took a lot of time to build that momentum. There were, Alan, we were talking before the show about how your son's flight schools had, maintenance delays and things like that. And it's taken him about a year to get his private. It took me the exact same. But after that was done, I went through an accelerated program. I went through multi-engine commercial CFI, double I, MEI, all the flight instructor ratings, everything in an accelerated program inside of 4 months. And that was the turning point for me, because then it was on. I got to eat, sleep, and breathe it every day. I took a semester off college just to get the flight school done, and I flight instructed from there. And we can dive into, what came next after that. But we'll kind of start there.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. What if there was one really great experience during that time? Like, what's a memory from that period that maybe kept you motivated, or was just something that stands out as something? For me, I bought a plane in St. Augustine, Florida, and flew it back across the country. So seeing the Gulf Coast,
Yep.
From a fairly low altitude in a Cessna 172, or flying over the Grand Canyon for the first time, like, these are things that stand out. There's also spinning on my private check ride accidentally when I was trying to do the power on stall, recovering it and still passing the test.
That's great.
So there's things like that stand out. Is there anything like that for you that really stands out?
Yeah, we got to do a coast to coast cross country in a Piper Seminole, which was that long cross country stuff was really appealing. But I got to say, for me, it was the first time ever flying a multi-engine. And that was the beginning. Lucky enough, at the time when I went through this accelerated program, we flew primarily multis. And the very first day that I flew in this program was a Piper Seminole. And having those two engines out next to me and taking off in the multi-engine, I mean, that was just, it completely changed my perspective on flying, and I couldn't sleep that first night. It was so much fun. So if you get
feels
the chance,
like you're in a real airplane all of a sudden, right?
It feels like you're in this sled with the two engines right there. It's just so cool.
Yeah, and you've got the Top Gun anthem playing in the background, because now you're pretty certain you're going to start pulling 9Gs in that twin engine. How about any experiences maybe that were terrifying, or where, I think in an aviation career, all of us come to a point where maybe we're a little beyond our experience, or maybe beyond our training, or weather catches us. Have there been any experiences like that for you that have maybe been a humbling experience?
Yeah, there hasn't been many, I have to say. I probably, more, what was I going to say? Maybe redo that. You can cut that one out. Yeah, there really hasn't been many. There was one where I had just gotten my private pilot's license. I flew a 150 down to Oceanside Airport in San Diego, and I accidentally landed with a tailwind. almost took that thing off the runway. And I'd come in, I was like, okay, it's runway, whatever, facing towards the ocean. And then I got all turned around and decided to flip flop my pattern. So that wasn't a good one, but for the most part, I've had some mechanical failures and stuff, but I've always felt pretty well trained to handle the situations. So.
Well, you're ahead of the game for me then, because I can think of several. Maybe it's just because I'm not following a professional career, so I've been in aircraft that maybe haven't benefited from a professional maintenance crew all the way. And they haven't been terrible things. I'm obviously still standing here today being able to talk about it. But I ask that because I think that sometimes from the outside looking in, people look and they see just the good things that are happening. And I want to transition this into a conversation about your involvement now in real estate and as that's grown, because I'm sure as an entrepreneur, it's impossible to have a perfect safety record. You're going to have mistakes along the way. They might not be catastrophic, but you're always going to have an opportunity to learn. And so I'd love to hear about your, now you've started your career as an airline pilot and you're getting into real estate. What did that look like? And bring us along that flight path from where you started then to where you are now.
Yeah, so the real estate bug really bit me in high school. Got really into the idea of passive income and financial freedom, and I read a bunch of books about flipping houses. Not to say that I really wanted to get into flipping houses, but read Rich Dad Poor Dad and a bunch of real estate investing books that really caught my passion. But, obviously as a kid straight out of flight school, had no money, and was really busy chasing this airline career. And so that sort of had to be put on hold. Once I graduated college, I went and flew caravans in New Mexico. And, to highlight the long way to the top, if you want to rock and roll, I tell you what, I was flying. I did this for about 8 months flying. I got a street captain job flying caravans, which is a 9-seat turboprop, single engine turboprop for anybody that doesn't know. And they were continuous duty overnights. So I would go to work at 5 or 6 p.m. We'd fly this thing down either through Alamogordo and El Paso to Carlsbad, or to El Paso and then Hobbs, New Mexico, which are these little tiny towns in southern New Mexico. And we didn't get a hotel because we were technically on duty. We'd get down there at 10 or 11 p.m. and then we'd depart the first flight at 5 a.m. the following day. And so we carried a suitcase with a sleeping bag and a pillow, and we'd sleep on the floor of this air terminal down there. So I did that 5 days a week for 8 months, building turbine time, and was getting paid about $850 every 2 weeks. But again, if you're young, that's fun, and if you're not super young, that would be a pretty miserable existence. But got my hours there and worked my way up back to San Diego to fly Metroliners, which is about a 19-seat twin turboprop. I was on a Navy contract there, and then managed to get on with my major airline from there in 2010. And first year pay at the airlines isn't the best, but it was more than I had ever made. And I was, saving every penny I possibly could because I knew I wanted to invest in real estate. And so I bought my first house right after getting off first year pay. Bought my first house in Vegas when I was 24, 25 years old in 2012, and rented it out to a family. It was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, single family home in Summerlin. I think I bought that house for $175,000. And a couple years later, I built some equity in it. And so I sold that, made say $100,000 on it, something like that, and bought a couple of condos in the Seattle area. From there, flipped that to multifamily, and then eventually found syndication. So to keep a long story fairly short, my plan originally was to continue buying residential properties and trade up into the multifamily space. Multifamily being anything bigger than 5 units on a lot makes it commercial real estate. So I bought some small multifamily with the goal of continuing to grow this personal rental portfolio and replace my income. And in the process, I started frequenting these real estate investing conferences, which if you're wanting to get into real estate in a big way, I cannot stress enough how important it is to surround yourself with other people who are in the real estate game. Real estate is a team sport. It's not something that you can do in isolation. So you have to surround yourself with other people who are doing it. So I started frequenting these real estate investing conferences, the first of which was the Best Ever Conference, which at the time was in Denver. I'm actually going to that conference in just under 2 weeks for, I don't know, the 6th or 7th year running. It's now in Salt Lake. But in that process, the goal of going to those conferences was to expand my network and buy more multifamily on my own. Instead, what happened was I met a bunch of people who syndicated real estate. For anybody that doesn't know what syndication is, it's sort of like buying a ticket on a commercial airline, where instead of, Alan, you going out and flying your Bonanza, you say, you know what, I'm just going to buy a ticket on Delta, and I'm going to use this professional flight crew and this professionally maintained aircraft to just get me where I'm going. Well, that's a lot like what syndication is, where it's a professional team. They are the airline pilots of real estate, where this is all they do day in, day out. This is their profession. They find, acquire, operate, and sell. And that's a fire alarm. Can't win today. Oh, buddy.
That's awesome. That's the first fire alarm I've had on a podcast, so that's great.
I think we're good. All right, where was I? Operate and sell commercial real estate, and they bring in private investors that invest, and the private investors take a majority stake in the profits. They take a minority stake in the profits for doing all the work. And at the time, I had just upgraded to captain. This was my first upgrade at my airline onto the 717. And I was making great money. We just signed a new contract. And so I'm making great money in my W-2. And at the time, I was also flying across 6 time zones to chase contractors around on a Burr deal that I had bought in South Carolina. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is silly. Let me just focus on my primary career, skip the side hustle, and invest passively. And that's exactly what I did. So I took a hard right turn in my real estate journey and started very aggressively investing in syndication deals. And that's been the best transition I've ever made in my real estate career, because I realized that, while I love real estate, I'm a deal junkie. I love looking at deals and acquiring real estate. I didn't love the management. So once I owned it, chasing around property managers and dealing with financials and shopping insurance policies, just wasn't what I was called to do. So being able to invest passively with professional operators across a diverse set of asset classes and geographies was wonderful. And so that's where I made that right-hand turn and started investing passively. So that sort of brings me to, where I am in my flying journey at that point, and making the transition. And I suppose we could go further, but I'll stop there to see if you have any questions.
Well, I think you brought up going to these networking events. Was that where the idea of syndication, where you were introduced to that? And there's a lot of opportunity out there. And especially right now, all of the headlines are about a lot of deals that are going bad and investors are losing money. So were all of those experiences good? And how did you vet the operators that you're working with? Because just like going on an airplane, you don't know the guys that are flying the plane usually personally. And so how do you determine? Now, fortunately in the airlines, there's a mechanism in place that vets them for you.
Very true.
But that's not true necessarily in the investing world. So how did you sort through the different opportunities, and how have those opportunities turned out? Do you have a metric that you use when you're evaluating a deal?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I guess the short answer is that I didn't in the beginning because I didn't know how to. And so, I just started building relationships at these conferences. And I have to say, all of the deals that I've invested in with operators who I've met personally at one of these investing conferences has actually gone quite well. It's the operators, I dipped my toe into syndication prior to this with a number of groups that had been introduced to me by friends, and I've lost all my money on one of those particular deals. It was ground up construction in Hawaii, actually, and that was a complete disaster. The team had no idea what they were doing, and we ended up hitting burial ground, which put the project back about 3 years. In the process, the debt just ate the project alive. But so not all deals have gone well, but I think that's unfortunately what you have to do is if you want to learn to swim, sometimes you just have to jump into the deep end and be willing to lose some money and take some knocks. And the good news is now with my company, I've been able to take those knocks and learn the hard way for our investor group, and now we're able to vet those sponsors a lot more effectively. Now that I've got a lot of track record behind me, we have a whole advisory board, but that's a completely different conversation to get into. but I think the most important thing is track record and relationships when you're looking at pilots to fly your aircraft. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, it's not like that you're flying on, say, Delta or United, where they have a process in place for vetting their pilots and training their pilots. It's everybody's sort of an independent contractor out there, and so it's up to you or the fund that you're investing through to vet those pilots and boroscope the engines and so on and so forth.
So, how long from that decision, that hard right turn that you made, did that transition to, rather than just investing in other people's deals, actually becoming the GP and inviting people to invest with you? Because that's a pretty significant step. In fact, it's almost like turning back in the other direction, where
It
now
is.
you are taking on some management roles and having to chase contractors and things like that. Not necessarily in the same way, but there's a lot of complexity in becoming a sponsor of a deal. So walk me through that decision, and then tell us about Turbine Capital and about why you're doing it, who you're serving, and what the mission is there.
Yeah. So, this all came back to conferences. So what happened at a number of these conferences was I kept bumping into doctor groups who educate physicians and have private equity groups for physicians to help them invest in real estate, diversify their income streams, and to diversify their portfolio away from the public markets. Because as we all know, most high income W-2 professionals have a tax problem, which they need help with, and real estate is a great way to address that. And they also have usually not enough diversification outside of the public markets, which provide tax efficiency, cash flow, and some diversification away from market correlation. So I looked at this and I thought, this is great. I'm going to go join the pilot group, and it didn't exist. This was in 2019. And although I never set out to form a company, and I certainly didn't want another job, the fact that it didn't exist just was essentially low-hanging fruit, while also being something that the aviation community desperately needed. And so it wasn't a decision that I took lightly, but it was one that ultimately I thought, this is something that this professional demographic needs. And if this is the opportunity that has landed in my lap, let's take it. And so I've spent the last 4 years and upwards of $100,000 on mentorships and advisories and mastermind groups to ensure that I've got the right people surrounding me to build this company. And today we are the foremost private equity group for pilots that finds and vets large-scale commercial real estate deals. We invest as a group, so we're essentially a very large jet pilot investor club that offers streamlined access to commercial real estate opportunities.
That's awesome. I'm sure for me, we're kind of doing the same thing. I sponsor deals, maybe smaller, and I love the general aviation pilot community. Always have. It's something that's kind of a hidden secret, I think, until you're in the club. But I've never flown anywhere where I needed something that I couldn't find another pilot that wasn't willing to help out in some way. And some of the greatest conversations you get to have are in the little FBOs or standing out by somebody's hangar, and you meet such a diverse landscape of people that are enjoying aviation. And so the idea of building a community around that had to have been really fulfilling for you, because you're already in the club. And so now allowing that club to progress in a different direction outside of their professional career has to be very personal, rewarding, and fulfilling for you.
It is. It has been. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing to be able to be making a difference. And, I'm sure we'll get into that, but we launched our own podcast about a year ago. That's been growing like crazy. It's called Passive Income Pilots. And the feedback that we've been getting on that is just heartwarming. So we're educating the pilot group, increasing everyone's financial aptitude, and then also changing lives by offering exposure to these types of investment opportunities.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced over the last 4 years in starting and growing this company? And I think we'll classify that in two different types of challenges. One, I would just say personal challenge. Maybe that's mindset or confidence in yourself to be able to do it. And I think the other one would just be there's been a lot of market fluctuations in the last couple of years. So I would love to hear how you've navigated the ups and downs of those challenges, because there's been a lot of whiplash in the market the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I'll start with the challenges of mindset and just starting the company in general. I think for mindset, the key is just surrounding yourself with a network and a community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and that's in the form of just pay to play. If you want to start a company, you need to surround yourself with other people who are doing it, and if it takes cash to get into that room, that's the price of admission. I definitely couldn't have started this without the mentorship that I frankly paid for. And in terms of the biggest challenges of starting the company would be, I think, wearing all the hats. When you first start, there are so many different skills that I had to learn, from web development to email marketing to design to copywriting, and you're doing all of it. And so as the company grows, you're able to start hiring great people and passing all of those hats out to certain individuals. But in the beginning, you're doing everything. In terms of market fluctuation, I don't see that too much of a challenge, because I think that's the wonderful thing about real estate is it's so forgiving. It's like powder skiing. You can, if you buy the worst piece of real estate, if you wait long enough and you don't have too much debt on it, you'll make money on it eventually. Real estate is just an incredibly forgiving asset class, and just as you do in any type of investing, you kind of have to dollar cost average. So we buy at all points of the market cycle, and at some points of the market cycle, those deals might be a little thinner. In other points of the market cycle, those deals will be complete home runs. But when you average those out, it's the other wonderful thing about real estate, because it makes money in four ways, right? Appreciation, cash flow, amortization, and depreciation. So the average returns of real estate over the long term are higher for a degree of risk than any other asset class, which is why we love it.
How big a piece of investing with you is a self-directed IRA or 401k? I have to imagine that that's a fairly large component because of the retirement structures from the airlines. And how are you helping to help pilots understand the availability? Because I have a lot of friends that are like, yeah, somebody else manages that and I'm not allowed to touch it. And they think that's the only option. So what is your advice and education around that?
Great question. So as pilots, we have very generous 401k plans for anyone that's just getting into the business or in flight school, and you're curious. I'll share it with you. Industry standard right now is about 16-17% of your gross earnings gets contributed into your 401k, no matching required. So if you make $200,000 a year, that would be what, 34,000 at 17% that would be contributed by the airline in addition to your 200,000 into your 401k, and that doesn't matter if you contribute $1 or $10,000 that year. It's automatic. There are many pilots, myself included, who the company contribution maxes out in the later part of the year, and that starts spilling it over into your paycheck. So we end up with very large 401k plans that create this issue of imbalance, where we have a ton of money in a later account. This is money that you can't access until you're retired. And it's all exposed to the public markets. And you're right, Alan, you can't touch it. If you're currently employed by an airline, that money is locked up, and you cannot invest it in an alternative asset such as real estate. However, if you have an old 401k from a employer that you are no longer with, that's collecting dust, you have the option either to roll it into your new airline 401k. This happens a lot when people go through the regionals. They might accumulate 50 or 100,000 in a 401k while they're with an employer building time, and then they get on with a major. The retirement provider will come in and talk to the new hire class and say, okay, here's the paperwork to roll your old 401k in. Well, this is not tax, legal, or investment advice. However, you have the opportunity at that moment to take an alternate course of action and roll it instead into a self-directed IRA. Well, there are custodians, many dozens of custodians, that will allow you to invest that IRA into things like real estate. So my personal opinion of what is a good strategy to do with that money is to roll it to a self-directed IRA and invest it in real estate, because you're going to have plenty of money in that major airline 401k. There is no shortage of cash that's going to be going into that. And once you roll it, it's locked up forever until you retire. So that's a really great way to roll an old dusty airline 401k into something that you can use to invest in real estate. You can also take any IRA and roll it into a self-directed IRA. You also can have as many IRAs as you want. So if you have 200,000 sitting in an IRA, it doesn't mean you have to roll the whole thing over. You can bring over 100,000, invest it in real estate with a self-directed IRA custodian. And yes, it is quite common, and it's a good percentage of the investments that we handle are through self-directed retirement accounts. And the benefit of that is you never have to worry about capital gains, particularly if you do a Roth conversion. But we can get into that.
Yeah. We might leave the Roth conversion for another financial focused show. When we started out, we were talking about being able to see the future. What's the future of Turbine Capital? Where do you see this going for you, Tait? As I've watched you over the last couple of years, it seems to be this really quick acceleration, and it's been exciting to watch. Where do you see this going?
Well, our mission is to improve the financial lives of pilots through real estate. And our vision is to be the premier private equity firm for pilots, and to be the essential next step beyond the traditional markets. So we want to be right there. Our intention is to be around for indefinitely into the future, but certainly over the next 2-3 decades, to help pilots diversify outside the traditional markets, and to build a thriving community of pilots at the same time that helps advocate for financial literacy and help pilots make better decisions with their money and plan for a better future.
Is there a point where you think this pushes you out of your W-2, or do you think you'll be able to run the two side by side for a while?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot. Do you think you're going to quit flying? I tell you what, Alan, if I won the Powerball, what's the Powerball today? I don't know, 600 million or something like that. I wouldn't quit. I love flying. My grandfather used to say, I'd do it for free. And I don't know if I'd go that far, but, getting to saddle up a wide body jet and fly it internationally, and it's just such an incredible joy. I love the people I work with. I love my fellow pilots. The flight attendants are amazing. The company is incredible. I'd like to fly less, which I think I've been able to do. I've been in the left seat for the last 8 years. I actually just downgraded to the right seat, so now I'm back to being a very senior wide body first officer, which means I get to fly less and focus more on my company. And so in that regard, I think it's a success. And a few years down the road, I think I'll probably take a command again, albeit I'll be a little bit more senior, and I'll be able to fly, the schedule that I want, that's fairly reduced.
Let's talk for a minute to that young pilot, like my son, or maybe some of the instructors that I had that now are in the regional airlines, that can be a difficult period because maybe they're not sleeping on the floor of a terminal because they're flying to Kodiak, but it probably feels like it in a lot of ways. It is a long road to the top. What advice would you give for them as they navigate that part of their career? And how quickly did you feel like things accelerated for you after you got out of that short time period?
Life is short, but it's also long. And so, for those pilots that are, grinding through the hours right now, I would just say, don't forget to enjoy it. That's some of the coolest flying that you'll do is the smaller airplane stuff. And I know that, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You're trying to get to that major, you're trying to get that seniority number, and that's all great. Don't stop. Don't take your foot off the gas, but at the same time, enjoy it. Flying that caravan while sleeping on the floor sucked. We used to take empty legs. We'd fly, below over the ridge lines in southern New Mexico, right over the pine trees, and with these beautiful sunsets. And that's something that you just don't experience when you're at the majors and you're flying at 38,000 feet over the ocean. It's just a completely different experience. So take time to savor the journey, because aviation is so vast, and it's enjoyable, and it should be enjoyable.
Is there going to be a fourth generation in your family of pilots?
No plans for kids for us, but we'll see. I tell you what, that uncle that I went down to Fort Lauderdale and spent 2 weeks with, he never had kids, and he was always my idol, and I hope I can be that for somebody else.
So are there nieces or nephews that you have the opportunity of being that uncle for now? Or how, I guess where I'm driving with this is, how has being a pilot and real estate had an impact on your family?
Well, there's also real estate in my family. My mom is a real estate agent, has been for 25 years. My wife is also a real estate agent. So they're on sort of the residential side. I'm more on the commercial real estate investment side, which funny enough, they do not intersect whatsoever. They're completely different. There's really no overlap. But I think what we're trying to create is lifestyle by design, where we're creating time, money, and location freedom, where we can spend time doing what we want, where we want, with who we want. And that's the power of passive income and financial freedom. So I think real estate is, in my opinion, the best way to get you there. And we're well on our way.
Is there a bucket list aircraft that you'd like to fly that you haven't been able to yet, Tate?
Oh, man. Well, in terms of just flying, I had the opportunity, which I actually turned down in my early 20s, to go into the Air National Guard after I was hired by my airline, and potentially fly fighters. Now, who knows if I would have gotten through, but I turned that opportunity down because at the time I was flying 12 days a month, getting paid, really great money. I felt like I was a trust fund kid. I'd fly to Japan, I'd fly to New York, and then I'd have 18 days off at the end of the month, and free travel all over the world. And it just, I wanted to enjoy my youth and my life. But I tell you what, flying a fighter jet would be pretty cool. So if anybody out there owns a MiG or an L-39 or something like that, I would love to go for a ride in one of those things.
Yeah, maybe somehow that can be a benefit for working with Turbine Capital, right? Do you exchange shares, Tate, for a ride in any kind of a fighter jet? Is that promotion we can put out on the?
Maybe we can do that. Yeah. That'd be great. But I would love, I love general aviation. I'm a partner on a Bonanza myself, and would love to trade up to TBM or an Epic or something like that eventually.
That's great. Is there a goal for that, or is that just hopefully that happens someday?
That is definitely a goal for that.
Fantastic. What about, do you do any aviation charity work?
Not currently, because I am working 6 or 7 days a week and heads down building this company. So there is a lot of plans for charity work. in the future. Met some incredible scholarship organizations at this last conference at Women in Aviation. We'd like to get involved with that. But the next 2 years are really heads down grinding to grow the company to where we see it in the future. So we got to put in the hard work.
What are some of the
and
needs that you
first.
see? Yeah. What are some of the needs that you see for the company to take it to that next level, Tate?
Really, it's just expanding our scale. We have all the systems in place now. It took 4 years to build the infrastructure that we have and the teammates that we now have in place. And now now is the exciting part where we can just, turn the volume up on marketing and share our story with more people and expand our network.
Fantastic. My dad, as I was growing up, used to say something all the time. It was Alan, remember the little things. And so the final question that I have for you is, if there was one little thing that you could pass on to a pilot that's listening to this show, what would that piece of advice be to help them enjoy aviation, whatever it might be? What little thing would you like to pass on?
We all get so caught up in, the grind, right? I think this is a piece of American culture where it's all about career progression and getting to the next level. And then once we get to the majors, it's all about saving money to invest it. And my advice would be to enjoy your life. Don't forget to enjoy your life. I was very fortunate to get on with my airline in my early 20s. And I spent the majority of my 20s just traveling and enjoying life. And I think that's something that other countries get right in terms of a gap year between high school and college, where they travel and just have great experiences. And I think that has broadened my, who I am by taking that time to travel, meet people, enjoy myself. And that's something that you can never get back. So it's always a balance, right? Compound interest is the seventh wonder of the world. But at the same time, don't push so hard that you forget to enjoy it along the way.
So with that, now you've said that, we'll do one follow-up question. How are you enjoying life right now? What are the things that bring you joy outside of being in the cockpit?
Well, good question. So I am working too much, but I tell you what, I would say that we're doing a good job of maintaining at least 3 or 4 really great trips per year with friends to maintain those relationships. So we're going to Aspen in about a week, doing a couple days of skiing with some really great friends. And we're going to Greece this summer to go sailing for a week in the Saronic Islands. So taking that time where it's like, hey, this is non-negotiable. We're taking this trip with really great friends, and we're going to enjoy.
Fantastic. We will leave information in the show notes for people to be able to get in touch with you and with Turbine Capital. Thank you for sharing your time today, and fair skies and tailwinds and both your aviation career and with Turbine Capital. It's amazing to watch.
Thank you, Alan. Good luck to everyone listening who's on their aviation journey.